There's an idea that most people will never take seriously enough to actually test. And that idea is the world you see around you, the life you're living, the circumstances you find yourself in. None of it came before your thinking. It came from your thinking. Neville Goddard spent his entire career trying to get people to understand this, and in Out of This World, he lays out exactly how it works, and more importantly, exactly what to do about it. The first thing that Neville establishes is something that sounds really simple, but is actually really easy to get wrong. He says the first step to getting what you desire is to realize that you already have it. Now, before you write that off as wishful thinking, understand what he's actually saying. He's not telling you to pretend. He's telling you that desire has to come from a place of fulfillment, not lack. Because when your desire comes from a feeling of lack, every action you take is going to be rooted in that same energy of not having. And that's a cycle that just keeps feeding itself. The practical work that he gives for this is something he calls a state akin to sleep. Not fully asleep, but that in-between place where your body is still and your mind is still conscious enough to direct your thoughts. In this state, he wants you to imagine a scene. Not watch it from a distance like you're looking at a screen, but to actually be in it. He gives the example of imagining a friend standing before you, putting your hands into theirs, having a real conversation about your desires as if it already happened. The distinction he draws here is crucial. This isn't visualization in the passive sense. This is full sensory immersion in a present moment reality that doesn't exist yet in the physical world, but exists completely in your imagination. He also gives a very practical tip for keeping your mind from wandering. Condense the entire goal into a single repeatable phrase or action and keep returning to it. Because the mind left to itself will spiral. One thought leads to another, and before you know it, you've drifted completely away from what you were trying to cement. Bringing the mind back again and again until the thought becomes solidified. That's the actual work. So why does any of this actually work? Neville claims that assumptions, if persisted in long enough, harden to actual facts, and not metaphorically, literally. To understand this, you have to follow his thinking on dimensions. He argues the reason people are so locked into material reality is because of their five senses only give them access to three-dimensional space. And because that's all they can perceive, they assume it's all there is. But Neville pushes back on this. He uses the example of actual dimensional objects. Imagine a flat triangle. You look at it and you can identify a flat two-dimensional object. But if you raise its points, you can infer the existence of a third dimension you weren't previously observing. Neville applies this same logic to the fourth dimension, except instead of spatial depth, the fourth dimension is all of time existing simultaneously as a living animated whole. What this means practically is that the future isn't fixed. It's more like a sentence that can be rearranged. Take this sentence for example. Just by rearranging the words in the already existing sentence, you rewrite its whole reality. The events of your three-dimensional life works the same way. In a dream state, in deep imagination, you're reaching into the potential realities available to you and restructuring them according to your desire. You're not creating something from nothing. You're selecting from what already exists in a dimensionally larger world and pulling it into this one. So let's spell out the steps for this one more time. First, define exactly what you want. Second, construct a specific scene, not a vague feeling, but an actual event that would naturally follow the fulfillment of your desire. And third, immobilize the body, enter that sleep adjacent state, then mentally inhabit the scene as if it's happening right now, not in the future, right now. Neville also makes an interesting point about how you know it's actually working, once you've done it a few times. He says to pay attention to your imaginary conversations. We all have them, the internal dialogues we run with people in our lives. Those conversations are shaped by our sense of self. When you start to notice a genuine shift in how those mental conversations are going, that's your signal that something has actually changed internally. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Neville claims that dreams and imagination are the most powerful tools available to human beings. In a state of sleep, he says the gap between imagination and reality collapses entirely. There's no delay, no buffer. The internal assumption is immediately reflected externally. And because this greater, dimensionally larger world is always slowly passing through the material one, we have a continuous opportunity to use our imagination to bring our outer world in alignment with our inner one. Look as though you saw, listen as though you hear, stretch forth your imaginary hands as though you touched, and so too will your assumptions become your reality. The most philosophically demanding part of four-dimensional thinking is that there is no outer change without inner transformation first. This is not to say that physical actions have no meaning, but that any actions taken without a genuine shift in your concept of self is just rearranging furniture in a burning building. Through his own practices, Neville came to see that the world around him was always a direct reflection of what he held about himself internally. Through imagination and feeling, we fashion the world around us, and it is through our own will that we illuminate or darken our lives based on the concepts we carry about who we are. Why this philosophy is so taxing is because it means full accountability. It means that if something is wrong in your life, the first place to look is inward, not for blame, but for the source. And as soon as that internal transformation takes place, as soon as you genuinely shift who you believe yourself to be, the world has no choice but to reshape itself around that new assumption.